We're bringing in Michelle Obama here. Let's hear what she has to say.
All right. Something wonderfully magical is in the air, isn't it? Yeah. You know, we're feeling it here in this arena, but it's spreading all across this country we love. A familiar feeling that's been buried too deep for far too long. You know what I'm talking about. It's the contagious power of hope. The anticipation, the energy, the exhilaration of once again being on the cusp of a brighter day. The chance to vanquish the demons of fear, division, and hate that have consumed us and continue pursuing the unfinished promise of this great nation, the dream that our parents and grandparents fought and died and sacrificed for.
Pause. I gotta debunk this. My grandparents did not die and sacrifice for Kamala Harris to be president of the United States. And I've seen a number of people point this out on Twitter and say this as well. This is what your grandparents fought for. No, they didn't. In fact, my grandparents were not into electoral politics. My grandparents didn't vote because they knew it was bullshit. My grandparents grew up and lived in the projects, and they knew that these political officials didn't help them any damn way. That's not what my grandparents fought for. So you see what's happening now? Now they're trying to use Kamala Harris's identity and say, this is what your grandparents fought for. No, they didn't. They didn't fight for that. Who are you talking to, Michelle? Who are you speaking to right now? You're not speaking to the average Black American that grew up in this country. You're speaking to the Black Boule. That's who you're talking to.
America, hope is making a comeback. But to be honest, I am realizing that until recently, I have mourned the dimming of that hope. And maybe you've experienced the same feelings. Is that deep pit in my stomach, a palpable sense of dread about the future. And
yeah, it happened when I was struggling to pay my rent. It didn't happen because, you know what I mean? It happened when I was struggling to pay my rent. That's when I had that deep pit, Michelle.
For me, that mourning has also been mixed with my own personal grief. The last time I was here in my hometown was to memorialize my mother, the woman who showed me the meaning of hard work and humility and decency, the woman who set my moral compass high and showed me the power of my own voice. Folks, I still feel her loss so profoundly. I wasn't even sure if I'd be steady enough to stand before you tonight, but my heart compelled me to be here because of the sense of duty that I feel to honor her memory and to remind us all not to squander the sacrifices our elders made to give us a better future. You see, my mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She believed that all children, all people have value, that anyone can succeed if given the opportunity. She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning. So my mother volunteered at the local school. She always looked out for the other kids on the block. She was glad to do the thankless, unglamorous work that for generations has strengthened the fabric of this nation. The belief that if you do unto others, if you love thy neighbor, if you work and scrape and sacrifice, it will pay off. If not for you, then maybe for your children or your grandchildren. You see, those values have been passed on through family farms and factory towns, through tree-lined streets and crowded tenements, through prayer groups and National Guard units and social studies classrooms. Those were the values my mother poured into me until her very last breath. Kamala Harris and I built our lives on those same foundational values. Even though our mothers grew up an ocean apart, they shared the same belief in the promise of this country. That's why her mother moved here from India at 19. It's why she taught Kamala about justice.
And she had the money to move here too. Let's not leave that part out, Michelle. She had the money to move here. Let me tell you guys a little secret, because I worked in higher ed for over a decade, and I can let you know, especially with those PhD programs, which I also oversaw, for the international students that are coming here, they already have the money to come here. Does everybody understand that? They already have the money to come here. So it's not like she was struggling to get here. She had the money to come here. That's what people have to understand. So that comparison that Michelle is trying to make between her mom and Kamala's mom is a very different thing when your parents have the money and you're a part of a caste system where you have the means and the resources to come here in the first place. I read Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. I read her book. So I read about how she grew up. And there's a difference from Michelle's family where they're part of the Great Migration, where they move from the South to the northern cities and to Midwestern cities like Chicago, because that's where a lot of the factory jobs were. So I know about the way that Michelle grew up. It is not the same thing. Let her continue.
About the obligation to lift others up, about our responsibility to give more than we take. She'd often tell her daughter, "Don't sit around and complain about things, do something." So, with that voice in her head, Kamala went out and she worked hard in school, graduating from an HBCU, earning her law degree at a state school.
Then they have to throw that in there, right? Because, you know, they have to mention the HBCU. Black people, she went to HBCU.
And then she went on to work for the people, fighting to hold lawbreakers accountable, strengthening the rule of law, fighting to get folks better wages, cheaper prescription drugs, a good education, decent health care, child care, elder care. From a middle-class household, Kamala worked her way up to become Vice President of the United States of America.
Let's pause here for a second. She didn't really work her way up to that. You're leaving a lot of things out of there, Michelle. She locked up a lot of Black people, in particular Black men. That's her record. Don't come for me, fam. That is her record. She did that shit. She locked up Black parents, most of them who were single parents, for truancy in California. That also funneled Black kids through the school to prison pipeline. Kamala Harris played a part in that. Kamala Harris got to where she is because there was a guy named Willie Brown that she was dating who was also married, but apparently his wife was okay with it. And Willie Brown has gone on record to say that he is the one who helped Kamala Harris get into those positions. So let's stop pretending like she got there just because she worked hard. Oftentimes that does not happen when you get to those types of positions, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a lot of people who are hardworking that are applying for those positions just like you. Oftentimes it comes down to who you know, who you networked with, and that's how you get your in. Don't leave that out, Michelle.
My girl, Kamala Kamala Harris is more than ready for this moment. She is one of the most qualified people ever to seek the office of the presidency. And she is one of the most dignified. A tribute to her mother, to my mother, and to your mother too. The embodiment of the stories we tell ourselves about this country. Her story is your story. It's my story. It's the story of the vast majority of Americans trying to build a better life.
No, it's not your story, Michelle. Again, I read her book, so I don't know. Maybe Michelle needs to go back and look at the book that she wrote, because I read her book. Michelle's parents, for the most part, were working poor. Her dad worked a union job, and she even mentioned that even back then, even though he was a part of the union, he didn't make as much as the white workers did that were part of the union. She said her dad never missed a day of work. I remember all of this. She grew up on the south side of Chicago during that time. It was still integrated. Then when gentrification started to slowly come into the neighborhood, most of the white families started to move away, and then the schools started to fall apart. I remember all this. And then because of her grades, at some point, she ended up going to school with, I believe, who was Jesse Jackson's daughter. She never liked politics because of her experience being friends with her and what Jesse Jackson went through when he was running for public office. I remember all of this. Michelle Obama was very smart, and she made her way to Princeton. But make no mistake, her story is not the same as Kamala Harris. Like I said, Kamala Harris's mother and her father already had a leg up when they came to this country. So a lot of times when people tell you, oh, like Vivek Ramaswamy with his BS, my parents came here with nothing in their pocket. No, they came here with degrees. Stop that. Stop that. They came here with nothing. You came here with something that most people in this country will never have. So Kamala's parents came here to join the PhD program. They already had degrees. Kamala's mother already came from a family that had the money to send her here. So no, Michelle, you don't have the same upbringing. Your family, your parents didn't have that money. They didn't have those resources, according to your book anyway.
Look, Kamala knows, like we do, that regardless of where you come from, what you look like, who you love, how you worship, or what's in your bank account, we all deserve the opportunity to build a decent life. All of our contributions deserve to be accepted and valued. Because no one has a monopoly on what it means to be an American. No one. Kamala has shown her allegiance to this nation, not by spewing anger and bitterness, but by living a life of service and always pushing the doors of opportunity open to others. She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth.
Oh, in that case, Michelle, you're right. But in that case, shouldn't you be pushing for reparations? Bad timing? Okay.
Bankrupt a business. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. No. We put our heads down. We get to work. In America, we do something. And throughout her entire life, that's what we've seen from Kamala Harris, the steel of her spine, the steadiness of her upbringing, the honesty of her example, and yes, the joy of her laughter and her light. It couldn't be more obvious. Of the two major candidates in this race, only Kamala Harris truly understands the unseen labor and unwavering commitment that has always made America great.
And she said all that and hasn't mentioned any policies, right?
Now, unfortunately, we know what comes next. We know folks are going to do everything they can to distort her truth. My husband and I sadly know a little something about this. For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be Black.
Yeah, she's going back to the Obama administration when Donald Trump was coming after Barack Obama all those years. But you know what's crazy about that? All the things that Donald Trump said about Barack Obama during that time, Donald Trump still won. And this is why some people don't like when I say this, but this is why I say Barack Obama gave us Donald Trump. Because if Barack Obama would have kept his promise to particularly working class people, those promises that he made, I don't think we would have had a Donald Trump as president. But you can't go particularly to the Rust Belt and those areas where people, you know, a lot of people lost their jobs, lost their homes, financial crisis and all that kind of stuff. You can't go to those people who are down and out and say you're going to do these things for them and then expect them to show back up and vote for you again for re-election, or expect them to vote for another member of the same party the next go around. So what you'll notice is that when Obama won in 2008, I believe he won Florida. But in 2012, he did not win Florida. And I think it was the same way for Indiana as well. I have to go back and double check. But some of those people turned away because they were like, no, this ain't working out. And you had the 2008 housing crisis. And then you had some people that voted for Barack Obama twice and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump. And you can't just pretend like those people don't exist. You know, those are economic reasons.
I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs.
See, they have to bring Michelle Obama out to really relate to Black people, because Kamala would not say it in this way, right? And then there's a lot of Black people who ain't too fond of Kamala Harris too, to be honest with you. But the thing is, Joe Biden also said Black jobs. The Root was saying Black jobs in their outlet years ago. So where's that pushback for Biden saying Black jobs? See what I mean? This is what bothers me. This is what I was telling you about the two-party system. So again, when you belong to a certain political party, you're less likely to criticize your politician. You see it happen on both sides. But she won't say that to Joe Biden. That's her buddy.
Look, it's his same old con. His same old con. Doubling down on ugly, misogynistic, racist lies as a substitute for real ideas and solutions that will actually make people's lives better. Look, because cutting our health care, taking away our freedom to control our bodies, the freedom to become a mother through IVF like I did, those things are not going to improve the health outcomes of our wives, mothers, and daughters. Shutting down the Department of Education, banning our books, None of that will prepare our kids for the future. Demonizing our children for being who they are and loving who they love. Look, that doesn't make anybody's life better. Instead, it only makes us small.
Does anybody notice that Michelle Obama is a better speaker than Kamala Harris is? Anybody notice this? And I said this before and people didn't believe me, but I said this on Rising, I think maybe a year and a half ago. I said that if Michelle Obama were to run for president, she could actually win. And that was before all this Kamala stuff. But Michelle Obama is a better speaker than Kamala Harris. But she didn't get the stamp of approval, apparently. And I don't think she wants to be president either.
And let me tell you this, going small is never the answer. Going small is the opposite of what we teach our kids. Going small is petty, it's unhealthy, and quite frankly, it's unpresidential. So, why would any of us accept this from anyone seeking our highest office? Why would we normalize that type of backward leadership? Doing so only demeans and cheapens our politics. It only serves to further discourage good, big-hearted people from wanting to get involved at all. America, our parents taught us better than that, and we deserve so much better than that. That's why we must do everything in our power to elect two of those good, big-hearted people. There is no other choice than Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. No other choice.
Now there's the whole, there's no other choice. So that just pushes third party and independent candidates to the side because she told you there's no other choice. Everybody see how that works?
But as we embrace this renewed sense of hope, let us not forget the despair we have felt. Let us not forget what we are up against. Yes, Kamala and Tim are doing great now. We're loving it. They're packing arenas across the country. Folks are energized. We are feeling good. But remember, there are still so many people who are desperate for a different outcome, who are ready to question and criticize every move Kamala makes, who are eager to spread those lies, who don't want to vote for a woman, who will continue to prioritize building their wealth over ensuring that everyone has enough. So no matter how good we feel tonight or tomorrow or the next day, this is going to be an uphill battle. So folks, we cannot be our own worst enemies. No. See, because the minute something goes wrong, the minute a lie takes hold, folks, we cannot start wringing our hands. We cannot get a Goldilocks complex about whether everything is just right. And we cannot indulge our anxieties about whether this country will elect someone like Kamala instead of doing everything we can to get someone like Kamala elected.
So do you see what she's doing? She's telling people, like, you shouldn't focus on making sure everything is just right. Now that is her way of pointing towards what's happening in Gaza. That's her way of pointing towards the fact that nobody voted for Kamala Harris during the Democratic primary. Pay attention to this, guys. Right? And I don't even think most people are calling for everything being just right. Most people are calling for things to be fair. And no, it's not fair that nobody voted for Kamala Harris in the Democrat primary and she was just selected. It's not about everything being just right, especially coming from the party that keeps saying we got to protect our democracy. So get on out of here. So there's that. Then with the issue in Gaza, or everything being just right. Genocide is a big deal. Last time I checked, that's not no little boo-boo here. That's a big problem. So that's our way of speaking to the protesters and telling them everything don't have to be just right. They really want you to overlook a genocide. Isn't this disgusting?